Hello students, today we are going to start the last part of the chapter and the last part is measurement of time. In this chapter we are going to study about the pendulum and the features or the properties of a pendulum and some properties of oscillatory motion also. Okay, and I would like to discuss about one more thing that is actually a doubt from a student, that what is exactly 1 kilogram, old definition and the new definition. So at the end of the lecture I would like to discuss about that problem also. Okay, so let's start from the measurement of time. We know the fundamental units of time and the second and SI unit is also smaller units, bigger units, we have discussed it already. And you must have seen in old wall clocks and nowadays also there is a pendulum which is actually oscillating at the base of the watch or the wall clock. And you must be aware that the old time they were using people were using the pendulum as the measurement of time. So basically what is a pendulum, today we will discuss about it and how can we relate a pendulum with time. Let's talk about this, but before it we should talk about oscillatory motion first thing, second some basic features about oscillatory motion. Okay, so whenever oscillatory motion's origin is a periodic motion. Periodic motion means when a body repeats its position during its motion again and again after a particular time period. That kind of a motion is called a periodic motion. If we talk about periodic motion, when a body repeats its position, means we are talking about the repetition of position or repeats its position after a particular time period. After a particular time period. So that kind of a motion is called a periodic motion. Okay, we are talking about a body which repeats its position. So position on its path, we can say like circular motion, it's a kind of a periodic motion because during the circular motion a particle repeats its position again and again during this circular motion. Okay, so it's a periodic motion. In the same way, the motion of earth around the sun, it is also a periodic motion because it repeats its position. Okay, or we can say the pendulum, it is actually repeating its position. So that kind of motion is called a periodic motion. The subcategory of a periodic motion, there are two possibilities. If I represent few positions and a few examples. So these three examples are of periodic motion, but if you focus on one major point, that in this example or in that example body is moving in a particular direction only, means it is not going back to and fro motion or the forward and the backward again, no. And but in this example the body is repeating its position but by moving to and fro like way. Okay, so there are two conditions. This type of motion is called oscillating motion, means oscillating motion is a type of periodic motion, but one essential condition is there, that the body must move to and fro on its path. So that type of a motion is called oscillatory motion. So all these three are examples of periodic motion, but only this one is an example of oscillatory motion. So all oscillatory motions are periodic in nature, but all periodic motions are not essentially oscillatory. So right now specifically we are talking about oscillatory motion, which is a type of periodic motion actually, and because we are talking about a pendulum which actually oscillates about its mean position. Okay, so let's talk about some features, some specific properties of oscillatory motion. So I would like to represent an oscillatory motion, linear oscillatory motion. So the position about which the body is repeating its position, body is moving back and forth, that position is called mean position. Fine, about which it is moving forward and backward. So that position is called mean position, and up to which point on either side. up to which point maximum it can go, or the point up to which it can take maximum displacement, it is called extreme position. Extreme position on right. In the same way, extreme position on the left. Is this clear? So, and the maximum gap, linear gap between the mean position and the extreme position on either side is called amplitude of this oscillatory motion, represented by A. So, if we are taking it, if we are taking amplitude on the right side as positive, so we must take it negative on the left side, where A is amplitude. Fine. So, we know about the amplitude. Amplitude is the maximum displacement on either side from the mean position during oscillatory motion. And now let's talk about time period. The meaning of time period. Time period is represented by capital T. It is the total time taken by a body during its one complete oscillation, one complete revolution, one complete vibration, as you wish, according to the type of periodic motion. So time period is time taken to complete one oscillation or one revolution or one vibration. Right now we are talking about oscillating motion, so I would like to keep it up to oscillation only. So that is called the time period. So it's a kind of a time. So it will be measured in seconds by SI unit. Okay. And now the second thing comes as frequency, represented by small f, or scientifically nowadays it is being represented by nu. It's a little bit twisted small v, which is pronounced as nu. Nu. So it looks like small v, but please make sure there is a difference between small v and nu. Okay. So you can use F symbol even. Instead of nu, you can use F, small f. So it is a symbol for frequency. So what is a frequency? Frequency is actually some kind of in daily life we use this keyword frequency. That for an example, if someone is we can say catching a ball or hitting a ball multiple times, so he is saying that my catching frequency or my hitting frequency is this. Suppose a punching bag, a student is punching a bag or a punching bag, so he is saying that my hitting frequency is 25 punches in a minute or 25 punches in 10 seconds. So we are talking about some kind of a number of oscillations, number of vibrations, number of revolutions completed in a particular amount of time. So we can measure the frequency. We always measure frequency for per second. Means number of rotations completed per second, it is also a frequency. Number of hitting the punching bag per second, that is also a hitting frequency. Number of revolutions taken by this fan in per second, that is a kind of a frequency. So frequency is number of oscillations completed in 1 second. Number of oscillations completed in 1 second, that is called frequency. And frequency is usually reciprocal of time period. But why? Frequency is reciprocal of time period. First we need to understand why it is a reciprocal of time period. It is a very simple mathematical treatment. That let's focus on the definition. So you will be able to understand that why it is reciprocal of time period. Time period is the time taken to complete one oscillation. Suppose we are talking about for n oscillations. Suppose a body is oscillating and it has completed n oscillations. So we are talking about n oscillations. So n oscillations completed for in a particular amount of time. So number of oscillations completed in 1 second we are talking about. So time, let's start from the time period. So we will be able to link time period and frequency. So time taken to complete one oscillation is called time period. And frequency is number of oscillations completed in 1 second. Number of oscillations, we are assuming that n oscillations are completed in 1 second. We are just assuming that a body is completing n oscillations in 1 second. So n oscillation in 1 second, or we can write in t seconds, or let's take it as simple, n oscillations are completed in 1 second, and if we want to link it with time period, so we need to calculate time taken to complete one oscillation. So n oscillations are completed in 1 second, so how much time it will take to complete one oscillation? So one oscillation will be completed in 1 upon n seconds. Are you getting this? N oscillations are completed in 1 second, and we need to find out one oscillation time. So one oscillation will be completed in 1 upon n seconds, and the time taken to complete one oscillation is being represented by capital T. It means it must be equal to capital T. So capital T is 1 upon n seconds, and let's focus again on the thing. N oscillations completed in 1 second. Number of oscillations completed in 1 second are called frequency. So n oscillations are completed in 1 second, so n will be called frequency f. So I can replace n by f. So T equals to 1 upon f, or f equals to 1 upon t. So simple unitary method you can use to derive a relation between frequency and time period. So frequency is always reciprocal of time period. So you can find out its unit. Time period is unit. Time is measured in seconds. So 1 upon second is frequency or second inverse. 1 upon second can be written as second inverse, which is in SI unit called, if we talk about SI unit, so SI unit of frequency, in the name of scientist, it is called Hertz. Hertz, Hertz, or sometimes it is written as Hz. So 1 Hertz equals to 1 second inverse, or 1 upon 1 second. Okay. So you will use Hertz. So if I am saying that the body is completing 20 oscillations per second, so its frequency is 20 Hertz. Okay. Your heart frequency, if we talk about number of heartbeats per second, so it would be heart frequency. You can calculate it by 72 beats per minute through it. So I hope the time period and the term frequency is very clear for you. Now we are able to discuss about one thing, that is what a pendulum. Okay, so let's move to the pendulum. So what is a simple pendulum? A simple pendulum is we can say a point heavy mass which is being suspended by a thread which is inextensible, means there will be no stretching or torsional development in the string, and that string has been supported with a rigid support, or means we can say this string suspended by a rigid support like this. You have fixed one end of the string with a support, fixed support, and with the help of a hook, a spherical mass has been suspended. Okay. So basically this small mass, it is heavy but small in size, is called bob. And if we talk about the total effective length of a pendulum, this development is called a pendulum or a simple pendulum. We are not talking about compound or complex pendulum which are being used in clocks, wall clocks also. It's a very simple pendulum. So this pendulum can oscillate from its mean position or about its mean position in this way. It can oscillate. Fine. So this is the mean position and these are the extreme positions beyond which it can go. Okay. And one specific property we need to understand about this pendulum, and I would like to draw it a little bit bigger here so that you will be able to understand about this particular property. It's a hook length and the bob. So obviously it is having its own radius also. Let's say R. R is the radius of this bob. Fine. And this is the rigid support. So there is a term that is called the effective length of a pendulum. Effective length means the length of the string length of the string, if we call it L, length of the hook, this is the length of the string up to this, okay, length of the hook, let's say H, small h, and the radius, that is R. So the total length from the suspension point to the center of the bob, this total length is called effective length of the pendulum. Effective length of the pendulum. It will be helpful in higher classes in lab. So the total effective length L is length of the thread L plus height or the length of the hook H plus radius of the bob R. This is called the effective length of a pendulum. And effective length, if we talk about, actually it is essential for upcoming topic. So whenever I am going to use the word length of the pendulum, I mean to say effective length, or my basic idea to call this a length means L, effective length. So keep this thing in mind. I will use small l, which is effective length, not capital L, which is being used for the length of the thread only right now. Okay. So we are talking about the relation between the time period, effective length, and acceleration due to gravity. If we say the time period of a simple pendulum, via experiments and even theoretically it has been derived that the time period T of a simple pendulum simply depends on three facts. Three facts. One is the length, effective length of the pendulum, acceleration due to gravity G. Acceleration due to gravity means if you drop a body under gravity, so it will start to accelerate downwards. So that acceleration developed in a body is called acceleration due to gravity, represented by small g instead of small a. And a constant number which is actually 2 pi. So it has been derived practically as well as theoretically, and you will derive it in higher classes in 11th class. Right now we just need to take care of the formula only. So it has been found time period of a simple pendulum is equivalent to 2 pi under root L upon G. 2 pi under root L upon G. That is the formula for time period, or in a different way we can write it like this: by squaring both sides it will become T square equals to 4 pi square L upon G. This formula is simply provide a relation between the time period of a simple pendulum with its effective length and acceleration due to gravity with a constant. It depends only these three factors, and it does not depend on the mass of the bob. No, it does not depend on the other factors, means the amplitude. No, it does not depend on amplitude even. Means it doesn't matter that you are displacing it a little bit with a very small value or with a little bit large value. The time period will be dependent of L and G, and if you are keeping L and G as a constant, there will be no change in the time period of the pendulum. Okay, so I hope this formula is clear for you. Now let's discuss about its graphical properties. Means what does it mean? How can we calculate the value of G with this formula if we are having time period and the effective length? Yes, you can find out the acceleration due to gravity, which you are or in the many numericals you have found it as a constant 9.8 meter per second square. So sometimes you should amaze that how can we find this value, and how did the scientist find this value. So this simple pendulum will be helpful to find out the value of G. Even you will see that the value of G is not constant at every place on the earth. If you go on hill stations, the value of G will decrease as compared to the value of G here. Okay, so let's try to use this formula to find out the value of small g. Okay. Now let's utilize this expression to find out the value of G. So let's extract the value of G. So G is, if I try to find out G, so G would be 4 pi square L upon T square. Okay, 4 pi square L upon T square, or if I am writing like this, 4 pi square upon T square upon L. or I should write it like this so that it would be clear for you. 4 pi square upon t square by L, means I am considering t square by L as a fixed data, or we can consider this as an experimental data, and 4 pi square is a constant. So ultimately the value of G, since 4 pi square is a constant, so ultimately the value of G simply dependent of t square upon L, because we can change the effective length of the pendulum, due to which its time period will also get changed. So this particular area, we can say packet, can alter the value of G, or it will be helpful to calculate the value of G. So if I try to plot a graph t square versus L graph, t square versus L graph, so you'll see one amazing fact from this. So I am just keeping two formulations for my observation, this one and one more thing, one more formula from this, as like t square upon L equals to, from this t square upon L, it would be 4 pi square upon G, which is actually a constant for a particular place. For a particular place, it should remain constant. 4 pi square upon G should act as a constant. So the value of t square upon L must remain a constant for a particular place. It is a constant for a particular place. So I am going to use these two packets for my experiment. Okay, so now let's start the experiment. Suppose you are having a simple pendulum in your laboratory, and you are having a stop clock or stopwatch. So what you are going to do after measuring the effective length? I have told you the method to measure the effective length. Just displace the pendulum little bit and leave it, so it will start to oscillate. As soon as you leave the, or you simply skip the pendulum from your hand, so you will start the stop clock and just count for 20 oscillations average, or 30 oscillations as you wish. So for 20 free oscillations of the pendulum, you will note the time, you will note down the time. So you can calculate its time period, means for 20 oscillations, suppose it is taking 1 minute, means 60 seconds. So how much time it will take for one oscillation? So you will be able to find out its time. So just make a table for time period, square and effective length, means by changing the effective length every time, you will be able to measure the different time periods. Okay, so you will make a table for different time periods and length, for different time periods and length, say t1, t2, t3, t4, and for this you will get the length L1, L2, L3. Fine. So now you will be able to plot a graph on a graph paper, a graph between t square versus L. Okay, so you will see one amazing fact. After plotting the graph from this table, you know, you have used the graph technique in mathematics also. Here you are using it, the same thing. You are having x coordinate value, you are having y coordinate value, you just need to plot a graph. You will see one amazing fact, that after joining all the points on the graph, you are getting a straight, we can say inclined straight line. And the slope of this line, what is the slope of a line? Slope means perpendicular upon base between two readings. That is called the slope of a line. In mathematics, you know about, you will study, and I hope you have studied about slope of a line, perpendicular upon base or y upon x in xy straight line graph. So if I say these are few readings A, B, C, so between any two readings, for an example between A and B reading, or you can say B and C reading, or even you can find out A and C reading. If you try to find out a slope, so we need to calculate. If I try to find out a slope between A and C, I am highlighting this, A and C. The slope is, if I say this angle theta, so the slope of a graph is actually tan theta. And if you are not aware with it, sine, cos, tan angles, so you can say slope is perpendicular upon base in this right angle triangle, if this point is D. So the slope is perpendicular upon base. Perpendicular is CD, upon base is, so you can say AD. So if you try to find out the slope of between any two readings at any point, or between any two readings on this line, So you'll see that its slope remains constant at every point because its angle remains constant at every point. So you will find it as a constant, and you will be amazed that constant is actually 4 pi square upon g. Means between these reading, if you try to find out slope, it means slope of t square versus L graph, it will give you a value of what? So slope is perpendicular upon base. Perpendicular is t square. Perpendicular is t square, and base is actually L, effective length. So slope is perpendicular upon base, CD upon AD. Let's put the values. So slope of t square versus L graph is t square upon L, and t square upon L is actually t square upon L is a constant 4 pi square upon g. 4 pi square upon g. So you can find out the value of g. You are having the value of this slope, you are having the value of 4 pi square, so you will be able to find out the value of g. This is the way to calculate the g at any given place. Okay, so at any place you can find out the value of g from this graph. So I would like to modify the formula, means the second packet, this one. So g equals to 4 pi square is a number, constant, upon t square upon L, and t square upon L can be called slope of t square versus L graph. So 4 pi square upon slope of t square versus L graph. So this experimental data will help you to find out the value of g at a particular place. Fine. So, and if you have the value of g, you will be able to find out the time period also. So I hope this entire derivation is very clear for you, and it will be a homework to study about the factors affecting and those factors which are not affecting at all the time period of a simple pendulum. Let me introduce one more thing, that for those pendulum whose time period are 2 seconds, means if the time period is 2 seconds, it is called seconds pendulum. It is called seconds pendulum, means for seconds pendulum time period must be 2 seconds. So time period is 2 seconds, and usual g value is 9.8 meter per second square here. Okay, so usual g value is 9.8 meter per second square, time period is 2 seconds, so you can find out the effective length. So it has been found that for seconds pendulum, the average or approximately effective length is 1 meter. So if you take effective length 1 meter and start to oscillate that pendulum, it will always take as a time period of 2 seconds for g 9.8 meter per second square. So I hope this entire process and entire concept is very clear for you. Now the chapter has been finished. I hope you will be able to solve the questions, question answers related to this chapter. And in the last, I would like to discuss about that problem, the definition or standard definition of 1 kilogram. So one student had asked one thing, that one doubt was there, what the standard definition of 1 kilogram mass, okay, or standard definition of 1 kg. So there are two definitions. One is the older one and the latest one. So according to the old definition, let me tell you, when we were discussing about the different types of physical quantities and different types of unit systems, I told you one thing, that some units have been developed or had been developed locally. In the same way, in the many different definitions had been set by British Council of Science earlier. So there comes a problem with this thing, that it was those definitions were not universal. Okay, they were some kind of regional based definitions. So to define a standard value of 1 kilogram, IBWM IBWM means International Bureau of Weights and Measurements. They have designed a prototype. They have designed a prototype as a standard of 1 kg mass. Okay, means all of the scales of of masses, means of 1 kg, 2 kg, 3 kg, 4 kg, all of the ways they have been developed by comparing the masses with that prototype. It has been placed in the lab center in Sèvres, near to Paris. Okay, so this prototype it was being used initially for the standard mass comparison. Okay, so that prototype has it had been made by standard platinum iridium alloy. So we can call it an artifact or a prototype which is used or which is assumed to be as a standard of 1 kg. Means all of the weights in the world were developed by comparing that prototype with the required mass. Okay, means if we want to develop a mass of 2 kg or weighing block of 2 kg, so we need to develop a weight which is just double as mass of this artifact. Okay, so this is the way to calculate the mass as standard 1 kg, but that was the older way. Now we need to calculate the latest, we need to understand the latest method to measure the mass. So what is the latest method? Actually it is derived from Einstein's energy mass equivalence formula, and it is a little bit higher level for your class. So I would try to make it simple as energy equals to mc square, where m is mass and c is speed of light, that is 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. What is it? It means if we are able to develop that mass into pure energy, it will produce the energy as compared to this formula. Means we can convert mass into energy. So we will be able to calculate how much energy is being developed from that mass. So it can be calculated by this formula. And if it is energy, so according to different theories like quantum theory, electromagnetic radiations, that energy will be a kind of electromagnetic energy. And for electromagnetic energy, formula for energy is E equals to h nu, where h is a Planck's constant. According to scientist name, it is a Planck's constant, and nu is frequency. Again, we have discussed about the frequency already. So energy is also equivalent to h nu. So if we compare these two formulations, so mc square equals to h nu, or we can write m mass as h nu upon c square. So if mass we need to define as 1 kg, so we can get mass as 1 when c square is just equivalent to h nu. Means when h nu and c square, they are just equal by values. At that time the mass of the body would be 1 kg. Means 1 kg mass, if we want to convert 1 kg mass into energy, its energy exactly must be equal to h nu. Okay, so this is the modern definition. I would not go, or I will not go through this calculations or for the values. Right now it would be sufficient for you to understand that what was the way to define 1 kg mass according to the modern era or modern physics. Fine. So I hope this doubt is clear for that student also and for everyone. So this lecture, now we are going to we have finished the entire chapter, and I hope you will be able to solve the question answers. Thank you.